Hello, my name is Mason Kewen, and I created this video to tell you a little bit about a professional development opportunity for you this summer. I was recently awarded a research grant through the Center of Educational Transformation with myself and my colleague, Dr. Mark McDermott at the University of Iowa. I am in the Curriculum Instruction Department at UNI, and our research grant focuses on curriculum aligned to the new science standards in Iowa, which are based on the next generation science standards, and a research-based way to teach them. So I want to tell you, one of the things I wanted to show you in this video is some work that Dr. McDermott and I have already done. And to give you a little bit of background of myself, I've taught for 15 years in the classroom, and this is my first year at UNI. And the reason I tell you that is I've used this approach with my elementary students. And Dr. McDermott, before he moved on to higher ed, he used the approach with high school students. So this approach to teaching science has been used K through college. And like I said, it's research-based, and we've got some pretty good evidence to show that it really helps student learning. Well, we did a project in Waverly where we worked with a group of teachers, and we created some really great curriculum with them aligned to the next generation science standards. One of the things we did was create this website, and in this website we have unit plans aligned to the NGSS, and you can just see an example here of what a fourth grade one might look like. And we want to do something very similar with you this summer to kind of help you as you start to integrate the NGSS into your curriculum. Let me back up here and go back to this. So let me just tell you a bit about the project. It's going to be at the University of Northern Iowa from June 27th to July 1st. Teachers will be paid $100 per day, and snacks and lunch will be provided. The first 3 days will really focus on the philosophy and the pedagogy of the approach. So we'll really talk about how to teach this way. And the last 2 days will be focused on developing lessons, possibly getting some materials for you to implement those lessons, and then further development of larger unit plans that you could apply going throughout the whole year. We will be providing opportunities for you to collaborate with other teachers who have used this approach in their classroom. So you will get an opportunity, like I said, to talk to Dr. McDermott and I who have used it, but then also teachers that some from Waverly and some from Waterloo that we've worked with in the past that have used it in their classroom. So you saw one of the group or the unit plans that we did in Waverly. This one is one of the things we like about this new project is it's based on the science writing heuristic, but we're looking at how math, technology, engineering, language arts, how those can all be related to a science plan. Especially if you're an elementary teacher, we understand that there's not a lot of time for science. And this is a way that you wouldn't have to change anything you're doing in language arts or math, but some of those great things that you're doing in those classes or in those subjects, you could apply to your science. One of the great things about this approach is a right to learn that we do. So this is an example from my classroom. Some fourth grade students did a right to learn, and a right to learn, let me pull it up here, is when you write, after you've learned all the science through the hands-on, through the inquiry approach, you write to an audience that is not the teacher, and preferably we like to write to a younger audience. We could show you some research on some really great stuff that we've found about this translation process that happens. So the students have to think about what they know content-wise with the science, and then they have to think about how would you write this to a younger audience. So they would have to explain in a way that makes sense to them. So they're not just repeating back vocabulary words. They're not just filling out a worksheet or just explaining it to the teacher in the way that they think the teacher wants to hear it. They have to really kind of dig deep and think about what they know about the science content to explain it to the younger audience. So this is just an example of a force unit we did, and my 4th grade student wrote this to a 2nd grader, and we actually went down to the 2nd grade classroom and presented these, so it was a pretty fun project. One of the things that myself as a classroom teacher that I really liked about these right to learns is that's where you can really kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because you can do a whole lot of language arts assessment through the writing. You can teach some of your science during your language arts time, so they're writing about a project that they actually did. So we found a lot of benefit teaching this way. Just to give you a little bit more about some of the research that we've done, we looked at students that had teachers that went through the workshop and how they performed on the Cornell Critical Thinking Test. And it was a longitudinal study where we looked at if the student was in the classroom of a teacher that attended the workshop and how they scored on the Cornell Critical Thinking Test. And then we looked at the next year and the teacher they had. And one of the really interesting things that we found was if a teacher or if a student was in the classroom of a teacher that went to the workshop, and then also the second year, we saw an over 2 years of growth as measured as on this Cornell Critical Thinking Test. But then alternatively, we found that when they in year 1, if they were in the classroom of a teacher that went to the workshop, and then the next year they went to a more traditional teacher that just did a lot of worksheets and lecture and things like that, they actually lost. They went negative on this Cornell Critical Thinking Test. So we really stress critical thinking and inquiry through this approach, and it's kind of like a muscle. If you don't work it, you lose it. So that was kind of an interesting thing that we found. Now, one of the components of this study that we're doing, and it's kind of what we found with the previous work we did with Waverly, was the thing that teachers found to be the most difficult was their role as kind of a facilitator during this inquiry approach. So teachers told us that, you know, the type of feedback that we give our students, that's something that we're really kind of struggling with, and it took them a couple years to really feel comfortable with it. So a part of my dissertation research, I created this tool called the Dialogic Feedback Observation Tool, and I watched videos of teachers as they taught a science lesson, and I coded the type of feedback they gave their students. So were they giving their students feedback that promoted more discussion amongst their peers, or were they just telling them if they were right or wrong? And one of the things that I found, which I think is very promising, is the teachers that provided more dialogic feedback to their students, those students scored statistically significantly higher on the the science section of the Iowa assessments. So for this study, what we're going to do is after the 5 days of professional development, we're going to ask the teachers to submit just 2 very short videos, one in the fall and one at the end of the year, that you don't need to rent any equipment. You can just set up an iPad and hit record, and then share that video with me, and I'll be the only person that looks at it. And I'm going to look at the type of feedback that the teachers are giving, and I'm going to give some feedback myself. I'm going to watch the video, score it, and then I'm going to share what I see, just kind of like an ongoing, almost type of coaching / mentoring approach where I can give you some feedback of the type of feedback that you gave your students. So that's the only additional thing we're asking the teachers to do. So just 2 short 30-minute videos of them teaching science in the upcoming school year. And then this was just one last little bit of research of some teachers that went through the training, and you can just see from the beginning of the training to the end their comfort level with learning the next generation science standards, getting familiar with the performance expectations and all the different things in the NGSS. So if you don't know much about the next generation science standards, we will be covering them, and we'll be looking at how to implement them in your lessons, or in your science lessons. So you can see my email there, and I will also send you this sign-up form if you're interested. All you have to do is fill this out, and then we'll get all the rest of the information from you when you come to UNI. I hope you consider coming to this professional development. We'll look forward to working with you.